When a home is sold in the state of California, it is sold as is in its present physical condition as of the date of acceptance. The property, including pool, spa, landscaping, and grounds, is to be maintained in substantially the same condition as on the date of acceptance, and all debris and personal property not included in the sale shall be removed by close of escrow or at the time possession is delivered to the buyer, if not on the same date. Further,
Paragraph 7B, Condition of property on closing. Property sold using the RPA is sold in an as-is condition. As-is does not mean the buyer takes the property as the buyer finds it on the day of close of escrow, but rather as it was on the date of acceptance. The seller is not obligated to repair unknown or known and disclosed defects that existed on the date of acceptance. If seller does not remove debris and personal property by the close of escrow, buyer can give the seller a 3-day notice to remove the items, and if seller still does not, buyer can pay to remove them and bring legal action against the seller to recover that cost.
This information is taken from paragraph 7B1 of the California Residential Purchase Agreement and Joint Escrow Instructions, last revised in June of 2022. Hi, my name is Nicholas Romo. I'm the real estate broker at Realty Connection Group. And in this video, I'm going to be going over different scenarios that involve the as-is clause in the California Residential Purchase Agreement. Before I continue though, I want to make it clear that I'm not an attorney and this information is not being shared as legal advice in any way, shape, or form. Let's take a look at paragraph 25D, which states that sellers shall disclose known material facts and defects as specified in this agreement. Buyer has the right to inspect the property and within the time specified, request that the seller make repairs or take other corrective action or exercise any contingency cancellation rights in this agreement. Seller is only required to make repairs specified in this agreement or as otherwise agreed.
As is, paragraph 25D. As is. As is means the seller has a contractual obligation to disclose known material facts as of the date of acceptance, and buyer has right to inspect and exercise any contingency rights in the agreement. Seller does not have to repair disclosed defects unless otherwise specified in the RPA or other form, such as request for repair.
Okay, so what have we learned so far? Let's go ahead and recap. Number one, we know that homes in California are sold as is in the present condition as of the date of acceptance. This means that the buyer accepts the property just as they first saw it and they decide to move forward with an offer. However, the seller has an obligation to disclose all material facts or defects of the property unless they're exempt. Who would be exempt from completing the transfer disclosure statement or disclosing all material facts or defects? Well, the bank in a foreclosure would be exempt. All they would have to do is fill out the ESD form, which is an exemption form, or a trustee in a trust, especially if these people never visited the property or lived in the property, so they would be under no obligation to disclose anything since they don't know anything about the property. And this has to be done within 7 calendar days by default per paragraph 3 and 1 of the Residential Purchase Agreement. However, these 7 days can be reduced or increased during the negotiation between the buyer and the seller. Number 3, the buyer has a right to inspect the property. The default time frame is 17 calendar days per paragraph 3L3 of the Residential Purchase Agreement. This time frame can also be reduced or increased during the initial negotiation between the seller and the buyer. Paragraph 12D states that seller has the obligation to make the home accessible to the buyer for inspections, and they must also have the water, the electricity, and the gas on during the entire escrow period. Now, after the buyer receives the home inspection report during the 17 calendar days, they can either 1, request that the repairs be completed or exercise any contingency cancellation rights per their agreement. Also, the seller has no obligation to make any known or unknown repairs. It's all negotiable. Basically, the seller can agree to make all repairs, some repairs, no repairs, reduce the price, or credit the buyer a certain amount at closing. And of course, the seller must remove all debris and personal items that are not included in the agreement by the time of close of escrow. Otherwise, the buyer can take legal action. Let's discuss a few scenarios. Number 1, the seller has no intention to make any repairs. Under what circumstances might a seller not have any intention to make any repairs? Well, the first thing that comes to my mind is they don't have enough equity. The equity that they have in the home barely is enough to pay off the commissions, all the basic fees such as title and escrow, and they don't have any money even saved up to be able to make any repairs. In this case, the seller has to make it very clear to the listing agent that no repairs are going to be done whatsoever. No matter how major or minor the repairs are, they're not going to take place. So the buyer in this situation has to understand that the seller is not able to make any repairs due to a lack of funds. Okay, so they have to come into this transaction very carefully, because from the get-go they're going to spend money on the home inspection. So they're going to be out anywhere between $300 to $500 if the deal falls through. The home inspection may reveal a lot of repairs or no repairs or minor repairs, depending on the age of the house and how well it was taken care of course. But in a situation where, say for example, they discover a major roof problem or a plumbing, electrical, those, or even foundation, those items are costly. Okay, so in a situation like that, in this scenario, the deal, unless the buyer has the funds to complete those repairs on their own after closing. And then now we got to take in consideration type of loan. If this is an FHA loan or a VA loan, this deal will most likely not close unless of course the buyer has the funds to be able to make the repairs on their own. What if, for example, the items that need repair or attention in a VA loan, for example, or FHA loan are just smoke alarms or maybe some peeling paint, minor items? Well, in this case, the buyer may decide to take on those repairs on their own, or the agents can jump in and help out with those repairs from their commission. So that's scenario number one. Scenario number two is, of course, the seller will consider making repairs. So what if they go into escrow and the home report is sold as is, the buyer accepts it just as they saw it, but during the transaction they find out that there's $25,000 worth of foundation issues. So the buyer, during their 17-day inspection period, decides to ask for repairs. So they say, Mr. Seller, please fix the foundation. Now the seller, as discussed up here, can agree to repair some of the foundation, none of the foundation, or reduce the price, or credit the buyer at closing with some funds. Okay, let's go into scenario number two. The seller will consider making repairs. So this is a situation that you want to be in, obviously, as the buyer, because the seller is going to be flexible. Okay, so now the buyer and the seller go into escrow, and unknown to the seller, there is a major foundation problem that for whatever reason they never became aware of it, and there's some electrical issues with the electrical panel that, if not repaired, can cause major problems in the future. So now the buyer, during their 17-day inspection period, finds out that the foundation is in need of repair and the electrical panel also has some issues. So they submit the request for repairs to the seller, asking for these items to be repaired. But the foundation is $25,000 to repair and the electrical panel is $4,000. Okay, so we have $29,000 of repairs that they're asking for, and they want to repair prior to closing. So now the seller reviews the request for repairs and says, I'm not spending $29,000 in any repairs. So what can be done here in this case? Well, number one, they can obviously agree to all repairs, but the seller doesn't want to in this case. They can agree to some of the repairs, so they can say, hey, look, I'll fix the electrical panel, but I'm not touching the foundation. Or they can say, I'm not doing any repairs, just like scenario number one. And they can also reduce the price by $29,000 or by $15,000. There's no set number that they need to reduce it by. It's all negotiable, and they can credit the buyer at closing a certain amount of money. So at this point, if the buyer and seller do not agree on one of these, the buyer can cancel the transaction per the residential purchase agreement using the cancellation rights. So there you have it. Just because homes in California are sold as is does not mean that the buyer is obligated to buy a property that has a lot of issues. It's all negotiable, and anything can happen once they get into escrow. Thank you for watching, and please hit the subscribe button and the like button